Hello everybody, how are you going? Welcome to the pros and cons of living in Newfoundland, something that not many people could actually report on considering it's going to be a fairly isolated place.
Hello, my name is Jay Schwartz and I am the Iceberg Realtor. Today I'm going to share with you my 5 pros and 5 cons of living in Newfoundland. And don't forget to stick around for pro number 4. That's my personal favorite. Let's get right into it. Pro number 1 is culture. Newfoundland has an extremely strong culture that's built on all the small communities and the working class people of this province that have for generations relied on one another. As you make your way across the province, you'll notice many thriving small businesses that either represent their community or Newfoundland.
Well, I guess in a good way, nothing has blown me away as of yet, as like you said, there's just this small town vibe that people are truly relying on one another. It's an individual culture or an individual ecosystem that it just operates independently of everyone else. It doesn't need to just be having major shipping routes and major trade and be a certain central hub of, I don't know, something in particular, be it potatoes even or anything like that. No, they're just able to do their own thing and just be separate from everyone else is what I'm gathering already. So it does then make me wonder, to what degree do they have their own culture? You know, you go from the west side and then you chop it in the middle with Quebec and then you go all the way over to the east as well. There's going to be 3 differences there, and not even just from an accent point of view. I can imagine that, do they have their own food and dishes and Saturday activities, or what is it? I would love to know.
Pro number 2 is the weather. And if you're like me and you don't like it too hot or too cold, then Newfoundland may be the place for you. Okay. With average temperatures of 0 degrees Celsius in the winter, that's a lot better than some of the other provinces out there.
Really?
And with the average temperature in the summer being 16 degrees Celsius, that's more like springtime weather. Okay. However, with recent years, summers in St. John's have become extremely beautiful. Sunnier than normal and warmer than normal, averaging around 25 degrees Celsius. And I'm enjoying every minute of it.
I'm sure you would be. Going from 16 to 25, you really just, I can only imagine exactly where he's talking about. He's going to be virtually in the same band in latitude and longitude, well, just latitude as the UK. Those temperatures certainly seemed pretty similar to what I've heard that the UK is. You're like, oh, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's almost 15 or 16 degrees. And that's exactly what he just said. But then all the way up to 25, then you're basically doubling your temperature. And I mean, there's bad things with that as well. But I can only imagine that reaping the rewards of the temperature, especially being in these kind of places where you are going to be having harbors and, I don't know, beaches and a lot of water around. Obviously it's Canada as well. You're going to be able to truly just enjoy the summer sun, so to say. What did actually catch me off guard though was the fact that he said 0 was the average temperature. Is that the average overall, or the average max, or the average min, or how is that entire thing working? Because to be having the average as 0 and that to be better than some other provinces, I mean, what are some other provinces living at -5 as an average for the entirety of winter? That seems ridiculous. I mean, is it always that cold? I mean, I guess it could be. It just seems really low, like to not even be 2 degrees or 3 degrees. That would make sense, but to be minus as an average, and in terms of where people are actually generally living in large populaces, it seems ridiculous to me. But I guess it is Canada, the cold country, which everyone says isn't that cold.
Pro number 3 is one of the biggest attractions of Newfoundland, and that's its natural beauty. With sweeping barrens, ancient rock formations, impressive coastlines, and being able to stare out at the endless ocean, which can be so good for the soul. So many people come here, whether you're staying or visiting, to see it. And you can experience it either through the East Coast Trail, Grossmoor National Park, or any of the other numerous provincial parks. Pro number...
Grossmoor? Here, what did he say? Grossmoor?
Grossmoor National Park, or...
It sounded like Grossmoor. Where is that? Oh, okay, that is definitely not what I expected. Here we go. But let me just have a look at a little bit of Google Maps and just see where in particular is this. Right, there it is. Okay, then. That's, okay, seriously out there, so to say. I mean, it's not St. John's, but jeez. I mean, this wilderness reserve also seems to be pretty darn massive. How big are you? Wait, 64K. I don't know why that it's the letters are so spaced out, but there we go. 3,500 square kilometers of wilderness reserve. I mean, I know it's not going to be the biggest, but to have it on an island like that, it's definitely a large allocation nonetheless, and it's not the only one. But no, as he was saying, just being able to stare out into the endless, in that regard, Atlantic Ocean. I mean, it is the Atlantic. It certainly doesn't have anything on the Pacific, for goodness sake. The Australian East Coast, I think, wins that regard, no matter where you're looking here. Unless you're looking at New Zealand, you're looking at the entire world away, basically. Whereas here, it's not as far, but for all intents and purposes, you can only ever see 3 kilometers, and so you were seeing out into the middle of nowhere. And I guess I'd never really considered that a lot of Canada, or just a lot of everywhere, never stares out to the ocean. Whereas, of course, with Australia, virtually every single person in the entire country stares out into ocean because we all live along the coastline. I mean, there's maybe 2% or 5% of people live inside, but everyone's just going, oh yes, the Great Australian Bight, the Tasman Sea, the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean. It's all up for grabs, where Winnipeg, they got nothing, that's for sure.
Pro number 4 is phenomenal home prices. Newfoundland has some of the most affordable housing in the country.
Really?
In the capital city of St. John's and the metro area, the average home price is $280,000. And across the province, the average becomes $225,000.
Wow.
So if you're a first-time home buyer, Newfoundland may be the place for you.
Interesting. That is obviously so much lower than, well, virtually anywhere else in the Western world at the moment. Everyone is going, oh, I just can't afford it, but to only be $200,000, like, that means you're getting a $20,000 for a 10% down payment, and then you're just going from there, which actually does kind of surprise me, considering the fact that it's such a remote area and also such a relatively small area, but so many people are apparently moving there. And so I would have thought that there would be a supply and demand problem where they're just going, okay, we have all these people, but it's just stupidly expensive because there was nowhere to put them. We can't build houses fast enough. We don't have the economy and the ecosystem and the personnel to be able to build any more places fast enough for these people. And so why and how is that even possible? To be having heaps of people migrating, but then also for prices to be down at 200,000 basically. 200,000! That's pretty darn impressive. Especially considering that from everything I've ever seen, he isn't just saying, oh, well, yeah, a house is like a studio apartment and there's just them everywhere and that's the only thing you can get. No, I think it all seems to be like family homes for $200,000 in a beautiful area overlooking the ocean and everything like that with allegedly fairly warm weather.
Pro number 5 is nightlife, and it's not exclusive to St. John's because all Newfoundlanders know how to have a good time. However, that's where most of the excitement is, with many bars and restaurants, festivals and concerts. St. John's is the place to be. It has the famous George Street, which is side-to-side bars all the way down the street, with the exception of the stage for concerts and festivals.
That seems like a difficult place to be a business if you're going, we really have to be conjuring up something special here if we want to be getting business, because if we're competing with an entire street of the same stores, it would be difficult unless people are literally just doing bar hopping all night and you're just getting naturally and via osmosis of everyone else, just getting them in. That seems like a really kind of cutthroat place to be. But I'm also surprised at the fact that they have a nightlife. I mean, I also need to know what the population is, but to be having concerts and everything like that, that's a decent amount of people you need to be even making that viable. Wow, so it's only 114,000. I mean, yes, it's in 2017, but even if you were to say it's now 150, even 200,000 would be probably a major stretch. And so to be going all the way up to 200,000 people, but it's only 200,000 people in a, I don't know how big of an area, but I can't imagine it's too big considering it's saying Newfoundland and Labrador is apparently 500,000. So all of everything is only 4 times bigger. So, oh man, to be having all of that just so centrally located, but also in such a small town kind of vibe, I can imagine that people are definitely going to be drawn to that.
Con number 1 is the weather again. With extreme winds and lots of precipitation, It's really important to have a great raincoat because umbrellas very rarely survive here. Con number 2 is the job market. Newfoundland only holds 1.38% of the population of Canada, which leads to limited job opportunities. If you're coming here, make sure that you have an in-demand skill set. Some examples of in-demand careers are software and electrical engineers, as well as healthcare professionals.
I would,
which leads us straight into con number 3.
Okay, well, first of all, I feel as though you definitely have to be able to add a third one in there, and that's just being a carpenter or some kind of trade like that, because if you really don't have people to be able to maintain people's livelihoods, you're going to have a fairly crumbling society very, very quickly, especially if you cannot build houses fast enough. But then I really don't know. If the prices are still so low because it's only 200,000, are there plenty of houses or not? It's really a weird balancing game that they're playing right there. But no, just going back to the raincoat and the fact that umbrellas, the poor things, were never going to have a chance in the North Atlantic. Good luck. So I can only imagine you're probably going to want almost just some sailing gear to be going down the street, as, I don't know, do they get that much snow? I feel as though I guess it's not as cold, he's saying, as some other places, but I feel as though I've seen some images because, like you said, there is so much water in the air that when it does finally hit zero, that precipitation just goes and just dumps 2 meters of snow, 6 foot of snow down, and there is not much you're going to be able to do about it.
Which leads us straight into con number 3, and that's our healthcare crisis. There's not enough nurses and not enough doctors in this province. It's extremely hard to find a family doctor, and there's next to no walk-in clinics. There are private clinics, but they are quickly becoming overrun to make up for the lack of public health care.
That is actually going to be a fairly difficult thing to tackle because, I mean, even just take Tasmania, which is basically, I've just realised, Australia's Newfoundland. They are absolutely just feeling the full frontal effect of not having enough staff in any industry, let alone the healthcare, because I guess there just isn't the money and they don't have the population and they just don't have the drive to actually bring people down there. Once again, beautiful place, all the oceans you could ever imagine, but they just cannot get people down there. And so I think those two guys just have to work together, both Tasmania and Newfoundland, just to try and find a solution together because, man, they are seriously lacking, obviously, and it makes sense. It really does, but it's still a difficult thing to tackle, just to try and get people out of the major cities when that's where everyone at the moment wants to live. That in itself has plenty of its own problems, as the major cities can't take everyone, and people just need to be spreading out a little bit for it to be anywhat remotely economically viable long term, but these places just desperately need more people, it seems.
If your health is declining or it's a top priority for you, then Newfoundland may not be the place for you because nothing is more important than your health and safety. Okay. Con number 4 is the cost of living. Here in Newfoundland, we pay what I call the island tax, and that's the additional expense that is required to ship goods in either by ferry or by plane.
Yeah.
Additionally, Newfoundland has the highest marginal income tax on individuals and families in the country.
Wow.
Con number 5 is more of a small nuisance than it is a big problem, and that's the additional time for shipping and receiving, again, either by ferry or by plane, which means no 2-day delivery with Amazon until they build a distribution center here.
And I think that right there is one of the major reasons, I mean, not that in particular, but one of the major reasons why these island places struggle to get people in, because yes, it costs more. It costs more in time and money and energy and everything to be able to get your goods there, your livelihood, even your family going to and fro. You can't just drive, you have to fly in or you have to take the ferry, and all those additional costs is, I guess, what becomes the deterrent, so to say, because people go, it's just not worth it for me. And then you have the healthcare on top of that. And that is exactly the same thing that Tasmania has. I mean, I'm fairly sure you can't be buying anywhere for 200,000, maybe more like 600,000 or 700,000 compared to 1.2 million. But realistically, it's the same thing. They have healthcare shortages, they have food shortages or petrol shortages and all those kind of things. I mean, these island places, even countries like New Zealand pay an island tax because they're importing from Australia. There are definitely things you have to think about, but my goodness, if you can afford financially and afford mentally to be living in these places, and even just job security wise and all those kind of things, I'm sure that so many people have an absolute ball there. They love every second of it. And so that's kind of the dream, isn't it? If you can, you should. And if you can't, maybe try to.